Hi, everybody. Merry Christmas. Did you get a lot of good stuff under the tree? Did Santa visit? When I was a little girl, and when I wasn't a little girl, when I was in my 20s, oh my gosh, my dad would be so excited on Christmas morning that he would wake me up at 5:30 even if I went to like midnight service somewhere and I was exhausted. He would wake me up at 5:30 and say, from his room, their room, he'd whisper, Deb, are you awake?" And I'm like, "Oh, no." He'd say, "We gotta get up. Let's get up." And I said, I can remember saying, "It's 5:30. Give me at least until 6 o'clock." Okay, I'll get up and turn the lights on. I said, "Why are you doing this?" By the time I'm 25, home visiting, I'm like, "Why are you doing this?" He says, "We gotta see if Santa came." He was such a little kid. And I'm like that. I'm the same way. So I'm very excited on Christmas morning. And here we are, taking a little time to talk about the Bible, about Jesus. So, for the last several days, we've been looking at the birth narratives. What do you think of that? What do you make of that? That our pageant version of the story is such, I don't know, a patchwork almost of these various traditions, isn't it? And there are parts of it that really leap out to me every year. I'm sure I'll talk more about the Magi as Epiphany gets closer, but the fact that they were the first ones outside of the Jewish community, they were the first ones worldwide who came to recognize who Jesus was. They didn't have to be believers, they weren't Jewish, but they recognized that he was the Son of God and they traveled to see him. To me, that's important. Or the fact that Joseph was an adoptive parent. Well, we're an adoptive family, so that's important to me. The fact that Mary pondered things in her heart. What mother doesn't? Especially a new mom. Especially, I would think, if they were that young. And then there's the whole light imagery that is so prevalent throughout John and his understanding of Jesus being born, if you will, before time, back when everything started. That was the start of the Christ consciousness. Um, it's been interesting for me as I've grown in my faith throughout my lifetime to watch how the importance of each of the gospel narratives has changed. It's shifted. I can remember probably, well, very, very young, it was the Luke narrative that spoke to me the most because it talked about a little baby and I was a little girl and I was a baby and I could sing away in a manger and really identify with what it was like to be a child, and that God came to life as somebody like me. That was important. Then as I got older, I think probably the next big thing for me after Luke was John. And when I hit my teenage years and I was really into Eastern thought and learning about Zoroastrianism and learning about Buddhism and Hinduism and Taoism and how that might, dovetail with my spiritual beliefs as a Christian. And was I really a Christian? Those typical things that we go through in our teens and early 20s. John's Gospel, primo for me. I could so relate. The separation of body and spirit and Jesus saying, "I am these things." And if I understood him correctly, he was also saying that I am these things, that we are, by virtue of being grafted onto him in our baptism, that we are also those things. We have the capability of those. So John's Gospel. I think it was a little later when I learned more about Hebrew and did more Hebraic study and learned more about Judaism, that I really, really appreciated the story of Matthew and how it wove together our Jewish roots with the story of who this man is. And then Mark, I was late to come to Mark, actually, and it wasn't until I was in seminary, and one of my mentors is Dr. Joanna, was and still is Dr. Joanna Dewey, who is a Markan scholar. And so being exposed to Mark through her eyes um, really turned me on to Mark in a way that I hadn't been before, because it was the first one written. I mean, and it's the distillation of, I think, some of the most important things about Jesus. So in these four Gospels, we have almost like four completely different stories, except there's something that ties them all in together, which I think is the Holy Spirit. But it really is a patchwork of stories that we put together to form our pageant nativity. Why would that be important? Is that something that speaks to you? It does to me, because it tells me that wherever I am in life, no matter which stage of life I'm in or what I'm going through, that there's going to be some place to hang my story up there next to Jesus's story, that there's some way that we can relate. And by having it not just be, one single story that I could fight against all the time and say, no, I don't believe that part, or I don't believe this part. No, there's enough here that there is something that I can latch onto and see the significance of and how it will relate to my life. The question for me to ask you today, though, is, what does it mean to you? Here we are, Christmas Day, in the year 2020. Wowza. We know that the calendar is probably off 3 or 4 years, but still, we're talking over 2,000 years and a couple of decades later, after this person was born. And do we know there was a person? Yes, we know there was a person named Jesus because of the Roman historian Josephus, who mentions him, and that's sort of an objective look. So we know somebody existed, which meant that he had to be born. Now, whether he was the Son of God to you or a Son of God, whether he was just another prophet like Muhammad, or he was elevated beyond that, that's for you to work out with the Holy Spirit. Each one of us has to answer that for ourselves. But still, 2,000 years later, people who don't believe in him still acknowledge what Christmas is, that Christmas exists and was the birth of this man. Pretty incredible to me that one person's birth would be acknowledged and celebrated, and in some cases by the adherents of the religion, at least, revered 2,000 years later. Why do you believe? What is it about this guy, this dude? What is it about this guy that has you celebrating his birth? And how do you celebrate it? Is it just a secular thing, like Miracle on 34th Street, and you like the way it makes you feel, and you like the way it affects our world for a few weeks? Or is it something faith-driven? Who is he to you? And why do you celebrate his birthday? Don't look at me for the answers. I have to figure this out for myself every year. One thing I think we can say is that we carry within us a place like Bethlehem. And so with that comes the opportunity to birth this new energy in us again. I hope you have a wonderful day and weekend as you celebrate the birth of Jesus, the Christ. Merry Christmas. I'll see you on Monday. Until then, God bless. Christ bless. Spirit bless. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.